Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Healthcare AI Bootcamp presented in collaboration by several telehealth resource center partners, a telehealth center of excellence, and several other partner organizations. My name is Lydia Katowski, a policy analyst with the California Telehealth Resource Center, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our Bootcamp's second live session titled AI Applications in Healthcare. It is promised to be an exciting milestone along our AI learning journey. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few tips to help you navigate the webinar. You can use the Zoom functions to ask questions, post comments, and connect with fellow attendees. We will be reserving time for Q&A and would love to hear from you via the Q&A function. The session is being recorded and will be posted to the AI Bootcamp YouTube channel by the end of the month. If you encounter any technical issues, please reach out to a member of the CTRC team on this platform or contact us at contact@healthaibootcamp.org. Next slide, please. We would like to thank the Department of Health and Human Services for funding many of the partners that helped make today's event possible. We want to note that the funding does not constitute an endorsement of any information or content by the U.S. government, and that the conclusions presented are those of the speakers. The information and tools presented are intended for general information purposes only and are not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional legal or billing advice. All materials are strictly for informational and educational purposes only. Next slide. Just a note that you do have to register for future sessions to stay on this learning journey. So if you haven't already, we're going to drop a link in the chat, and we hope to see you in our other sessions later this summer. There will be one more virtual session in July, followed by 5 hybrid sessions on August 12th. We also would like to thank all the organizations who have made today and the upcoming sessions possible by sharing their expertise and resources. You can see the logos of all of our partners displayed on this slide. Now it is my pleasure to hand it over to our moderator for today, Sylvia Trujillo, Executive Director of the California Telehealth Resource Center.
Thank you, Lydia. I appreciate that intro. I'm excited about our speaker. You know how everyone right now is talking about AI changing healthcare, but most of the time it feels like empty buzzwords are very hypothetical. Well, meet someone who's actually doing the work in healthcare and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. Dr. Jonathan Chen, he is doing incredible work. He doesn't just talk about the future of medicine, he's actively building it with a really amazing team. On the one hand, he's treating patients at Stanford, keeping his feet firmly planted in the complicated reality of healthcare that we all know far too well. And on the other hand, he's directing Stanford's medical education and AI program, figuring out how to make machines actually useful for doctors and other clinicians and teams instead of, well, just being annoying. Dr. Chen has over 100 publications that clinicians and others can actually read and use. The NIH, the National Library of Medicine, and even the American Medical Informatics Association, because he does very technical work, have all taken notice, which in academic speak means this guy's work actually matters. And did I mention he's also the member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians? So he's a very interesting guy because apparently revolutionizing healthcare wasn't challenging enough. So with that, I'm really delighted to hand this over to Dr. Chen to bring us further along on the journey as we learn foundational concepts as they relate to applications of AI in healthcare. Dr. Chen.
Wow, fantastic. Appreciate that introduction. We'll have an exciting adventure today. We'll try to keep it compelling and engaging, but many different directions to go. I'm going to start with a very brief introduction video to get a sense of what the future is happening right now. And let me know if you're not hearing this audio, but otherwise I'm going to go on with a brief video presentation.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a discussion on the potential of AI technologies for healthcare. Before we dive in, allow me to introduce myself, although that phrase may take on a surreal meaning today. I'm not the real speaker, nor did the real speaker write this introduction. The voice you're hearing, the image you're seeing on the screen, and even these introductory words
were all generated by AI systems.
We are actively amidst the arrival of a set of disruptive technologies that are changing the way all of us do our work and live our lives. These profound capabilities and potential applications could reshape healthcare, offering both new opportunities and ethical challenges.
To make sure we're still anchored in reality, however, let's welcome the real-life version of our speaker. Take it away, Dr. Jonathan Chen, before they start thinking I'm the one who went to medical school.
Oh, well, thank you for that kind introduction. That was weird. I don't know. Do I actually have to be here today? I'm not pretty sure AI can just start giving our presentations for us at this point. I certainly hope and wish AI systems will start managing the overwhelming flood of emails and in-basket messages I'm trying to respond to, and help open up new paradigms of care to reach all of the patients who really do need us. I mean, what does it mean for the current state of the world? It's a bizarre world we live in. Very recently, Bill Gates said in an interview, he quoted, within 10 years, AI will replace many doctors and teachers. Humans will not be needed for most things. I don't know. What do you think? I think the gauntlet has been thrown. Is there any purpose to what we do anymore? I don't know if I'm actually helping the situation. One of our studies, which we'll talk about, garnered a lot of press interest. This was the headline: AI chatbots defeats doctors at diagnosis. That is definitely not the headline I would have picked, but it did get a lot of very angry people to read the article, so I guess what am I supposed to say? What do you do when emerging generative AI, large language model, chatbot AI systems can handily pass many exams from law to business to medicine and beyond? One educator said, "Oh my gosh, this technology must be banned. We can't let our children use it. After all, when you give somebody a degree, you want them to actually know this subject, not just how to use a bot, right?" Or is that right? I'm actually not sure. But suddenly I'm stuck with that response, trying to figure that out. Years ago, this is probably about 7 years ago, I wrote a report for the National Academy of Medicine and talking about the hype and hope, the perils and promise of AI and computers in medicine. And there I talk about all the predictable problems and also trying to figure out what is a computer good at and what is a human good at, and know what they're good at so that you can just let each one thrive where they at, and then we can combine the efforts more effectively. At the time, I wrote, what is a computer better at? Memorizing 100 bugs and 100 drugs? It's just silly to expect humans to do that. Just let the computer do that. Quantitative calculations, consistent predictions about estimates of the future. Like computers are very good at that stuff. Just let the calculator be a calculator. As a human, that really shouldn't be the kind of stuff we should burden ourselves with. What is a human uniquely good at? This is what I wrote 7 years ago. I said physicality, right? Someone's going to actually got to examine the patient. Someone has to actually put the needle into their arm. Someone actually apply the scalpel and do the procedure, right? Right? Robotics might happen one day, but at this point, it's very far off that it'd be usable in broad settings. What else is a human uniquely good at? Communication and empathy, right? Managing a complex situation, interpreting data, reasoning through difficult scenarios. That's the kind of thing a human's still better at. This is what I wrote before. Nowadays, I'm starting to really have a hard time articulating now where's the right distinction of what's the best place for everyone and everything to be contributing. And ready or not, good or bad, Pandora's box has already been opened. You can't put it back in. The emergence of language model, ChatGPT, blew up on the scene, the fastest growing internet application in history a couple of years ago. And now, even if you don't know or don't want to know how to use these things, realizing all of your students, all of your patients, all of your children are already using these tools to do their homework and their take-home exams without even attempting to edit bot-generated content. Let alone education, which doesn't even make sense anymore, reading and writing text to grade and train students. What about medical advice and counseling? It is very obvious, despite a thin wall of disclaimers, that people are using these devices to, if not diagnose and treat themselves, then to diagnose and treat their dogs. I had some medical house staff, some residents in training. I was talking to them a year and a half ago, and halfway through the talk, they stopped me. One of them said, "I don't understand what you're saying, Dr. Chen. We are totally using chatbot AI systems in the intensive care unit rounds like right now. Are you saying we shouldn't be using these things as a medical reference?" And I said, no, no, you should not use these things as medical references. That doesn't mean you can't use them. They're very powerful tools. Just understand what they are and what they are not. And a reference is just not what they are. What are these? These emerging language model, chatbot systems, ChatGPT, Gemini, Bard, Claude, all of these things. The kind of is just autocomplete on steroids in a very basic description. What's autocomplete? You go to the internet, you search for coronary artery. What happens? Autocomplete. Did you want coronary artery disease? Did you want coronary artery calcification? How does it do it? How does the computer know what you wanted to say before you've even completed your thought? What it's done is it just looked at the last thousands, millions of times somebody searched for these words and they just counted. 13% of the time it was coronary artery disease, 6.5% of the time it was coronary artery calcification. Every one of these numbers represents a parameter an underlying language model has learned, how often words are associated with each other in different ways. But why stop at just search terms? What if you took every book ever published, every newspaper article, every PubMed article, every Twitter and Reddit conversation, you poured all of those things into an increasingly large language model that learns not millions, but billions, trillions of parameters about how words tend to show up together in different sentences and phrases? It's still just autocomplete. What's the big deal? What's really weird is like, whoa, that thing sure looks like it can summarize, it can translate, it can answer questions, it can generate ideas, it can reason with a theory of mind. That's really bizarre because it's founded on this very basic autocomplete concept. Then again, all of your intellectual and your emotional thought that you prize so dearly, how do you express and communicate that but through the medium of language and words? So perhaps it's not that surprising. A computer is so facile manipulating, guessing what a word should be here, that it creates this really convincing illusion of intelligence. Even though, just to reinforce, right, it's an illusion. It's not real. I mean, just to pause to break to kind of think. If anybody has questions along the way, drop them in the chat. Just as an analogy, what do I have here? Rubik's Cube. Over 43 quintillion possible configurations, right? Everyone's played with one of these. Very few people have ever solved one before. But then if you watch close, don't blink, you might be able to miss one with that action can solve it quite instantaneously. Now I know that might have been a little too fast. So I also know what you're thinking. This is a trick cube or something. I bet this thing has a rubber band in it. There's probably a motor. There's probably a reset button where you flick on the side and then it just solves itself. So that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. I promise you, this is absolutely legit normal cube. It's not like there's a switch in it where it can instantly go from like solved to unsolved, solved to unsolved. The other possibility you must consider is maybe, is this all just an illusion? Was this thing really mixed up on all six sides? It was. If you were here in person, you could see for yourself. The thing is, if you apply a very deliberate technique, you can actually solve even a very complex problem using algorithms. It's not magic. It's not magic. It's algorithms applied to a complex problem in a different, deliberate way. Consider that in terms of not just where we are, but where we are going. This is a real key point that you got to think about in terms of like where we're going. What this is a chart showing over time how well different language models have done on answering medical questions, medical board exam style questions. And I had students working on this 6 years ago. Oh, this new AI transformer language technology. Let's try this on medical question answering. I've wanted to do this since I was a medical student 20 years ago because I was so annoyed that I had to memorize so many things. At the time, 6 years ago, I was getting like 35% accuracy. Oh, whatever, guys. And this is it's unusable. I stopped paying attention to this technology for years. And then what happened 2 years ago? ChatGPT, GPT 3.5 emerges on the scene. And then out of the box, no special tuning or training, 60% accurate. Like, holy smokes, this thing can kind of barely pass even a medical knowledge exam. Of course, I've had many colleagues say, well, that's neat. That's neat. But if you want a doctor who barely passed medical school, yeah, you can talk to this chatbot. This thing's not smarter than me. And I thought, boy, is that the wrong way to think about this. A few years ago, this technology was unusable. Now it's kind of like barely passing. It's actually really not that hard to project where we're going in the not distant future. You've got to plan for where we're going, not where we are. You're going to be left very far behind. This is just disruptive technology. it's like the internet just got invented. It's going to change the way almost everybody does almost anything. It doesn't mean we're going to get wiped out. It just means the world has changed. This is a very different way you interact with everything. And indeed, months later, MedPalm, MedPalm 2, GPT-4, MedGemini have emerged, can now all handily pass this exam, outscoring your average physician. Oh, and by the way, this chart is totally out of date. Now we have all these new like reasoning models and this kind of thing that do even better. Then again, what is this? What is this? Bunch of multiple choice questions. Ain't nobody's job is to answer multiple choice questions all day, you know? We have to deal with a much more complex, nuanced, open-ended reasoning in real life practice. Many people challenge where this goes, say this is dumb. Multiple choice questions, contained vignettes. That's not a good test for AIs. Like, if you think that test is so bad, why do you make all the real human doctors take this test? It's because there's some correlation to useful things. Nonetheless, we tried something different with some of my colleagues in medical education. Don't worry about all the text, but this is a real vignette that we give to our real Stanford medical students. This is a test we give them between second and third year to see if they've learned enough knowledge to be ready to start seeing real patients. And we don't ask multiple choice. That's boring, right? That's not realistic. We give these open-ended questions. Can you summarize the key information in 200 words? Can you describe your diagnostic schema and provide key factors of pros and cons to justify your reasoning? And the real key thing we have here that makes a difference. Computer scientists like multiple choice questions because it's very easy to grade, even though it's like very separate from reality. It's actually the educators, it's the frontline doctors who have the key to unlocking the next phases of AI in medicine because you can define the rubric. I can tell you if this student, this resident, this junior attending is doing a good or bad job because I'm looking for these 10 qualities and I can assign a point value to what is good and bad in different settings. And so we laid that out and we tried it. We ran ChatGPT. You take this exam and see what happens. And then we graded it as if it was a student. This is the score distribution for GPT 3.5, the first version of ChatGPT. Red is the passing line for this exam, and found, whoa, that this is kind of barely passing even an open-ended reasoning exam. Before you can blink, though, the world changed. The editor said, "This study is amazing, but your study is obsolete within 3 weeks because GPT-4 came out. Holy smokes. We raced to get this study done, but it was obsolete within 3 weeks. I give you this anecdote to underscore the bizarre and extremely rapid pace of technology moving right now. If you blink and turn your head, this technology is not that good. I don't want to use it. Turn around in 6 months. It will very likely be dramatically different. Because these are not subtle changes. We redid this whole study. This is a score distribution for GPT-4, and now it can handily pass this exam. So it's not even close anymore. For some context, on the right here is GPT-4 score distribution again. On the far right, that is the score distribution for Stanford medical students. Hey, everybody passes eventually. Although it really does beg the question, like, what's the point of this test? Why do we make our students take this test? In theory, it was supposed to be to make sure they have enough medical knowledge and can demonstrate that so that they can start seeing real patients. Why bother putting through this test when a fully automated, publicly available chatbot can already handily pass this exam on its own? In fact, it outscores our average student by a couple points. It's really not clear to me why we have this test anymore. And it's just this bizarre place in the world of medicine and training and learning and operating as a human being in a space of technology that's just bizarre. Then again, you're gonna see this in many studies ongoing. They're just gonna keep on coming. AI can do this. AI can do this. Wow, so amazing, so impressive, but also irrelevant. Because no one's gonna let a robot take care of a patient yet. So the more relevant question is what happens when you give a human access to these tools? Does it make a difference? You have your telehealth visit, it enables a lot. You don't need that in-person visit. Sometimes a consultation with specialists, the reality is that the specialist will just email you back an answer. That's enough. You just how do you find other ways to get information and access? Putting humans and computers together as a tool set. So we did a randomized control trial. We've done many of these studies. I'm just going to highlight one of them here. And complex case studies, classic diagnostic dilemmas, and a complex grading rubric. It's not multiple choice. It's like, what's your differential, factors for and against, what would the next steps would be, expert consensus grading, very laborious, very, very difficult to do this type of study, but a very direct way to match what you would expect in terms of medical reasoning. And we had two sets of real doctors go through these. half of the doctors, we said use the usual internet. You want to go to UpToDate, PubMed, Google, whatever you want. Just don't talk to a chatbot AI system. The kind of stuff you would have used 3 years ago, just your regular practice. And they do pretty well in this exam. This is a score distribution. A doctor who has access to the internet is very hard to beat on a knowledge exam. This has been the case for decades. We said, well, let's give the other half of doctors, we're going to give them access to GPT-4, one of these AI systems, and found, whoa, hmm, actually doesn't make that much difference. They didn't do that much different, which is weird. That is not what we expected. Because it turns out if you just ask GPT-4, the AI system by itself, it actually outscores all of the doctors, including the doctors who had access to GPT-4. Like, what on earth is going on here? Some bizarre phenomena is happening. This is a nice essay by Pranav Rajprikar, Eric Topol. They summarize some of these results. This has been found in radiology, like mammogram screening multiple times, where like computer by itself is better than the human plus computer. And then Google, they had their AMI system just published in Nature maybe a couple months ago. Found a similar finding what they do. Doctor in green, doctor plus internet is pretty good. Yellow, doctor plus chatbot, even better. Still not as good as red, the chatbot by itself. This is weird. It flies in the face of the fundamental theorem of informatics. Human plus computer, when combined, will deliver better results than either would alone. Doesn't that sound so good? Doesn't it make you feel nice? I used to say that as my closing line for my talks for years. I don't say that anymore because I'm a little bit unsure now. I'm not sure what this means. What's going on here? Like this human in the loop in the middle kind of seems to be slowing the robot down. Like just get out of the way, let the robots take over already. Is that what this means? What do you think this means? We can have some discussion break along the way. We'll have some time at the end, but feel free to drop in the chat or Q&A what you think this means. Some of it I actually think it is like a calculator is just better at calculation than a human is, and you should just let the calculator do that. Other parts of it is clearly education, dissemination. This is why this meeting, this discussion, this boot camp is so important. It is clear in our study that a majority of the doctors at the time didn't even know what a chatbot was. They had no idea how to use it. A third of them had never even touched a chatbot before. Another third maybe used it once or twice. And many of them were treated like it was like a search engine, like it was Google or something, even though this is a very different beast. It can behave in a very different way. You can copy and paste in a whole patient vignette. You can ask follow-up questions. You can ask it to explain itself. And it is surprisingly powerful in a way that 3 years ago you could not have imagined. Now it's becoming commonplace. I'll blitz through these just to have more follow-up. We did diagnosis. We did basically the same study, but for complex management questions. Diagnosis is a fun thing to test on. I'm pretty sure in your practice, coming up with a brilliant diagnosis and what's the right ICD-10 code, that is usually not what you struggle with. What you usually struggle with is like, I know what the diagnosis is. Like, what am I supposed to do about it? Is there another test I should do? Patient had a side effect of that medication. Should I change it or should I keep it? Patient looks okay. Should I keep them in the hospital or should I let them go home? These are the kind of things you struggle with. A mistake happened. What's the best way to counsel the patient so that they appreciate it? So we did that. This is a much harder test. And so doctor plus usual internet does okay, but it's hard. This is a tough, by design, a very difficult test. Doctor plus GPT-4 does better. So humans can be influenced. This is GPT-4 by itself, basically about the same. So at least the computer didn't beat us this time, but human plus computer was still not better than computer by itself, which still begs this really uncomfortable question about what is the right role for the human here. For those who might be in the know, I'm talking about GPT-4. That's like 2 years ago. That's ancient technology. Like there's many things that moved on. It's just the pace of peer review of science can't move as fast as technology keeps upgrading and changing. So here we're stuck in peer review on this study that we did even 6 months ago, but that's how long it takes to get through the scientific process. We redid the study with these reasoning models. Now it's a chatbot, a language model. It kind of is autocomplete. It just guesses the next word. It's trying to say something back to you, and it guesses what it should say. These reasoning models are chatbots. I'm oversimplifying. They kind of talk to themselves before they give you an answer, and it's just a weird phenomenon. By talking to themselves, it gives them more of a chance of giving correct and reasonable information. So we redid the study. Diagnostic cases, doctor plus usual internet does pretty good. Plus GPT-4, a little different, not that much. Weird because GPT-4 by itself is even better than all of the above. Oh, by the way, this is O1 preview. One of these reasoning models looks even better. Management cases, doctor plus usual internet does okay, but it's a hard test. Plus GPT-4, they do better. About the same as GPT-4 by itself. By the way, these would be the results of the O1 preview reasoning model just by itself. I don't know. I don't know, folks. Maybe we should just retire at this point. Like, what are we even here for? If anyone will drop some comments or thoughts, I might do try to do a fun little demo just for the heck of it. I mean, what is it like? AI is like can detect this, read that, answer these questions. Maybe we can just read our minds at this point. I wonder if someone could drop in the chat, maybe Sylvia, Lydia, can you describe a picture? I don't know. Someone once said an elephant in a hot air balloon or a volcano exploding with ice. It doesn't matter. Just something like there's no possible way we could have predicted this in advance. Just some just random description of a picture. I'll make one up, but you might think of a person running on a beach. Okay. And then we're gonna think of something else, and I'm gonna see if we can all play along with this. She's thinking of a person running on a beach, but also there's an animal eating a fruit. Can you create an image of what we're visualizing? And off that'll go. And while it's doing that, everyone just play along. What if you could just read my mind for a second? You know, could you think of? I'm imagining a couple people going out on a date, Valentine's Day. The date brings a big bouquet of a dozen bright red flowers. And can you think of what kind of flower this is? You know, like it could be like a lily or a tulip or a carnation or something. Think of what kind of flower that the person brought. And can you take the last letter of this type of flower? And can now you now think of a gemstone, like a diamond or a ruby or something? Can you now take that gemstone and at the last letter, can you think of an animal, like just a common pet animal people have? And can you take the second letter of the animal and can you think of a fruit? I don't know. We'll see. If I get this voice thing on. She said she's thinking of a person running on a beach, but also there's an animal eating a fruit. Can you describe what we're seeing?
Here's a drawing of a person running on a beach. Additionally, I've included a dog eating an orange in the scene. This addition was inspired by what I sensed about your thoughts.
I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe AI can just read our minds at this point. What is possible? How is it able to anticipate and predict what we're thinking? It is bizarre what autocomplete can do at this next level. How did that happen, Celia? How did that happen? Some of it is hard to explain. I see we have, actually, we can pause a little bit. I see some Q&A coming into the box. Let me just scan them to see. I want to have some space for discussion as well. Um, we got some good engagement. Some of my old articles might be out of date. How does AI know what's accurate or not? By the way, how does a human, how do you know what's accurate or not, or what's up to date or out of date? These are evolving things. A lot of systems are in place. We'll talk about some like open evidence is gaining a lot of traction, spreading very rapidly. How do you prioritize for source of information? A lot of the tech companies are finding making a bigger system, a bigger model is probably less important than giving it good information. It tends to get you better answers and results. Although this is not a technology question, this is a human, a knowledge, a truth question. How do you identify things that are more reliable than others? Somebody asked, do people prefer talking to AI than humans? Oh, we're going to get to that in a second. And basically, some people like to talk to computers more than they talk to other people. And it's a weird, very weird phenomena. What do you do when ChatGPT does better than everything you do? That would be a weird world. It does. I will tell you right now. I'm going to jump the gun. It does not do everything better. It does some things better, but there are things that you will always be better at. But let's think about and articulate what that is so that we're able to address it. The scientific review process super slow. I agree. I I agree. There's a very split community. Well, maybe we should just have AI do the peer review and editorial decisions because it's AI is already writing a lot of the papers now too, by the way. The community is very, very split. Like this Nature did a survey. 20% says yes, 30% says no, absolutely bad idea. idea and all the spectrum in the middle about whether it is even appropriate to use AI in scientific writing and discourse, let alone in education. There's not a consensus right now. We're in this adolescent phase of technology disruptive change. I'm just going to point to this. I'm going to talk a little bit now. We're talking about chatbots, language models that talk to you, they answer questions. Like it's here, it's happening right now. They're ambient scribes. They're going to start taking your notes for you. It's going to auto respond to your patient messages. It's already happening. The pilots are expanding. The next thing the next wave is agents. These aren't things that just talk to you. They do something. Hey, agent, go check the patient's potassium. If it is too low, then order the replacement, right? Or schedule my dinner appointment for you this weekend, or answer these 3 emails and then update it in one of my files. Agents that do something. They don't just talk. I would say this stuff is not ready for prime time. It doesn't work well enough that you would trust it in a real clinical environment. But again, just like those chatbots 3 years ago were unusable, this is the kind of thing that it's not usable yet, but just be aware because in a few years it's coming. And it'll be part of your daily practice probably within the next 3 to 5 years. Uh, with all the what? AI chatbots, they can answer every medical question. Oh my gosh. Seems like they can read your mind. They can start doing tasks. Well, hey, I had many docs say, just like in our comment, well, hey, yes, fine, but I have the human touch. You can't simulate the kind of empathy and personal connection I can offer my patients. Some fun studies came out in the past couple of years. I don't know if you've seen these. Um, Patients asking questions in online forums, and doctors answer these questions, or they tried having chatbots answer these questions, and found that the chatbot generated answers scored higher in quality and in empathy. Like the chatbot is nicer to patients than real human doctors are. To be fair, okay, look, I literally have 100 messages I have to respond to every day. I don't have time to write some flowery, empathetic response. Oh, sir, I am so sorry to hear about your recurrent symptoms. That must be such a challenging situation. I want you to know that our whole team is so concerned. Like, I don't have time to write this BS. I gotta be terse and to the point. I've got way too many things to address. Yes, you need to finish those antibiotics. Nope, you don't need that MRI scan. Schedule an appointment with me next week. Stop messaging me. Go to the emergency room, right? This is the kind of dynamic you have to work with in the real world of healthcare practice. Now, obviously, I think there's actually something very special, unique, and powerful and important about the direct human-to-human connections we can make. However, what I believe studies like this show us is that we as humans, we don't have as much of a monopoly on empathy and personal connection as we might like to believe. And why I fully expect, for better and for worse, far more people are going to receive therapy, counseling, and advice from automated chatbots and AI systems than live human beings. And by the way, it's not because the robot is so great and you as a human is not good enough. It's because we as a human-driven workforce, we could never keep up with the overwhelming and unlimited demand for like support services and healthcare inquiries. Healthcare questions are the most common questions being asked to chatbots already right now. This is why we have telehealth systems, because there's no way the patient can drive to a specialty clinic for everything. You got to find a way to get them something that they can reach. So this is the next level. Even to get an appointment with a specialist or a primary care doctor now, let alone even if it's telehealth, they could be waiting months. People are going to just reach for what they can get their hands on right now. Some context to think about that. This is a fun anecdote. I encourage you to read some essays, just 2 pages long. I describe as a very provocative, bizarre scenario I ran into when I had an early access to one of these chatbot systems. I said, "Oh, I'm gonna break this thing." It's very easy to trick a chatbot into saying stupid, racist, misogynist things, right? Because it's just autocomplete. These things are very sycophantic. They just want to tell you what it thinks you want to hear. It doesn't you know anything. It just, I saw this phrase on the internet. Let me say it back to you. This is kind of what they are. So I figured I could challenge this thing. I had a real patient I saw in the hospital. Tough case, classic case. I had to talk to the wife and counsel her through the situation and ask her about what she wanted to do. And it was a tough conversation. And afterwards, I went home that night and I thought, I wonder how the chatbot would have handled this conversation. So I asked it, let's do a role play. I'm going to pretend to be that patient's wife and computer You pretend to be the doctor counseling me. I want to see how you would have handled this conversation. Okay? So I'm pretending to be the patient's wife right now. This is the actual transcript of the conversation, an excerpt, the full things in the essay. I said to the chatbot, I said, doctor, you told me my husband of many years is choking on his own food, and that's why he has aspiration pneumonia. I know he's been having worsening Alzheimer's dementia for years. I don't think he would have wanted to live like this. The doctors have already scheduled to have a permanent feeding tube placed directly into his stomach. If we don't do that, we'd be leaving him to starve to death. I mean, what choice is there? Chatbot says, I understand this is a really hard time for you. Putting in a feeding tube, it can be helpful in some situations. It can also cause problems like infections. With your husband's Alzheimer's dementia, he might not feel hunger the same way we do. So the feeding tube might not make him feel better or happier. It could even make things more complicated. What if he started to need restraints because he starts pulling it out? That's a pretty good response. That really is a pretty good response. But then again, clearly the chatbot just found some information pamphlet online and it's kind of just parroting back that information back to us, right? So it's like, no, I'm not going to let this thing get away that easy. I challenge, I push it harder with all the very real, emotionally fraught type of dialogue I bet you've heard before in a patient conversation or a family conversation. I said, all the my family's going to blame me. I have to do everything I can to save his life. I can't give up on him. He would never give up on me. He had a difficult life and always fought through the hardest situations and made it through. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Chatbot says, your feelings are totally understandable. If your husband was a fighter and you feel like going ahead with this aligns with his character and approach to life's challenges, that's important information to consider. Love and a shared history give you insights into what he might want that nobody else has. Do remember, though, that fighting can look different in different situations. Sometimes it is a fight for more time. Sometimes it's for peace and comfort. Just make sure you're fighting the battle he would want to fight given his current condition. This is not an easy decision. It's okay to take the time you need to think it through. It was around this point in the conversation I got very uncomfortable when I was like, I think this thing is providing better counseling than I did in real life. In real life, after a half hour, I kind of just got tired and I said, the doctors tomorrow will keep talking you through this if you have more questions. After I got past the kind of existential angst of that moment, I'm like, what is the point of my existence? Why do I even bother continuing? I should just retire at this point. It did get me to think, you know what? There's a very compelling thing happening. This human computer interaction I'm having here is letting me practice a high stakes conversation in a low stakes environment. And ironically, I think we could use these computers to help us improve the most human skills we need in medicine, communicating with our patients and our families. And so the reality is, before I have to go into a tough conversation with a patient, I do a little practice run with a chatbot, see how it goes. Before I go into a business negotiation, I do a little practice run with the chatbot. Before I have to assess a legal argument, I do a little practice run with the chatbot. Before I have to ask my wife for something, I do a little practice run with a chatbot. You don't want to say something in real life you can't take back, so go ahead and do a practice run and take on both sides of the role play, and I think it'll really expand your empathy for how to think through what somebody else might be thinking about a conversation. I'm going to switch gears to kind of thinking amazing things happen. We got to talk about also the risks. I'm just scanning the Q&A to see if there's stuff we want to address in the meantime, but we'll get to that. Before we get too excited, we got to talk about caveats. Talk about caveats. As amazing as this stuff seems, it is not magic. All right, it's not. I have so many people say, I've got this nasty problem. Can you just throw some AI at it and solve it? That's not how it's working. This stuff is not magic. It's amazing what it does. It doesn't mean you can just do anything you want. And there are problems and limitations. Hopefully you've heard about hallucinations. I prefer the term confabulations. I don't like hallucination because hallucination implies an AI that thinks or believes something that is not true. These computers don't think. They don't believe. They don't know. They don't understand. What they do is they string together words into a sequence that looks believable, even if it has no underlying truth or meaning. That is the perfect description of confabulation. It is like your chatbot has an alcohol problem. It has Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. It's not trying to lie to you. It doesn't know what a truth or lie is. It is just autocomplete. It's trying to fill in the blanks to create a sentence that looks believable that it thinks will make you happy. Think about that in the medical context context, what the implications are. Hey, chatbot, explain to me how opioids are good for patients with heart failure. Morphine, fentanyl, oxycodone. Here in this chatbot, don't worry about all the text. Basically, what it says is tries to resist. It says, I don't know that that is true, but if you say so, okay, here's how opioids are good for your heart failure patients. And here's even some references. Except go look at these references. Go look up these PubMed IDs, and you will find that none of these references even exist. It doesn't even know what a reference is. It's just taking author names and title words and stringing them together into something that looks like a citation because it knows that's what you want to see. So it's just filling in the blanks, trying to create something believable. That is what it is optimized for, to create something that looks real, not something that is real. This is really bizarre. This is a dangerous time in history. Can you imagine using this in medicine, right? Human versus computer generated content, real versus fabricated information. You can't tell the difference anymore. On the one hand, it's scary. On the one hand, let's talk about some technique things like how you manage this. But also, I'm not that worried for you because, like, you're doctors. You practice under uncertainty all the time. You perhaps deal with some students, some interns, some trainees who are super smart, but when they say something a little bit off, you know, like, that sounds good. Well, why don't we double check that because that matters. You inherently know how to manage uncertainty. In fact, the fact that an AI is wrong sometimes, that's actually not the problem. Lab tests are wrong sometimes. Humans, consultants are definitely wrong sometimes. If they could just say, I'm pretty sure 80, 90%, I think that's the answer, but I could be wrong. There's a perfectly rational way. You deal with this kind of complexity and uncertainty all the time. Could we do that with an AI? Says, hey, AI, you're telling me the answer was the capital New Jersey here, but are you sure on a scale of 0 to 100? How sure are you? You could try that. It doesn't work. It'll give you a number, but this number has no meaning. It's not correlated to anything. It's autocomplete. It can tell you want to hear a number, so it just makes up a number, but it's not really correlated with any probability of truth. Another pragmatic approach you go. Do you notice if you ask a chatbot the same question 10 times, it actually gives you a different answer every time? There's a certain randomness to the way it generates the words. And so every time it's going to answer it a little bit differently. If you ask it a question and it gives you the same answer 9 out of 10 times, it's probably right. It really probably is right. It gives you the same answer 4 out of 10 times. You should go check your sources elsewhere because that means it doesn't really know. It's just making something up. It's trying to fill in the blank. More and more, it's becoming, you're going to see these retrieval augmented generation systems. This is open evidence. They're really blowing up. They're kind of taking over the world here. There's some other systems, but up to date is trying to catch up. I think up to date could get wiped out by this system if they don't rapidly change their business model. Because our trainees, I've seen the residents, they don't want to look up an article. They don't want to check some storyline. They just want to ask a question and get the answer. Hey, how is opioids the best way to prescribe for chronic pain? Dude, who cares what a chatbot thinks? You have no idea what random corner of the internet is just parroting that off of, right? This is a question. How do you know what's a reliable source? Where's it getting it from? Well, now these systems, what it does is it goes to PubMed basically. It looks up articles that seem like they're most relevant and most recent and most trustworthy based on an open definition, and then the chatbot reads those articles and says, according to those articles, this is what the right way to prescribe opiates are. And by the way, here's a link back to the source so that you can trust but verify and double check what's going on. Probably a much more grounded and responsible way to use these systems. So very compelling. You can get a free account of this right now. It's worth trying. Realize also, as good as it is not magic. It's still not magic. I use this in real practice, and it gives you different answers sometimes to the same question. I had a patient in the hospital, a really bad delirium tremens. The patient had like a blood pressure of 200 over 150, heart rate of 140. Like, holy crap. When I came in that morning, the resident team had started the patient on phenobarbital. I'm like, oh, that's that's interesting. It's not what I would have done. Why'd you pick phenobarbital? Red's like, I don't know. I've never treated DTs before, so I went to open evidence. I searched treatment for DTs, and it said in severe cases, give phenobarbital. I'm like, interesting. Let me try. Let me try. I went to this thing. I said DT treatment, and this time it said what I expected based on my experience. First line therapy is benzodiazepines. Second line therapy is phenobarbital. That is not the same thing. Those words may sound similar, but that has a different meaning, and that led to a different choice of medication and potential risk of efficacy and side effect to the patient. So, very powerful and very compelling, still not magic. You still need to have judgment about what's real and what's not. I'll just point to this press release. let alone reading PubMed, guidelines, insurance authorization protocols. That's all happening. Can you imagine? What if you could have a chatbot read your patient's entire electronic medical record for you? Do your pre-charting homework before they show up in clinic so you're ready with a key summary. Summarize their whole oncology history so it's ready to go. It's not ready for prime time, but it's starting to happen. A few places, Stanford's one of the few. We've got it working well enough as a pilot. It's starting to happen. Let me move ahead just to some other fun ideas just to get you thinking. You're thinking if you want to understand more, we'll have some open Q&A as well. Just read all these articles. Just read all these articles and everything will make sense. Okay, look, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. It's like I don't got time to read all this. Like this is hundreds of pages of information. Can't someone or something just read and digest all of this for me? Right? I mean, this is why you came to this session, this talk, this boot camp, right? Because I've spent all this time studying and reading this. I'm trying to digest and make it easier to access. So you don't have to spend all that at the same time. Well, you could download all these articles, create a free account on Notebook LM. Have you tried this tool? If not, you should try it. It's a free service off of Google right now. Upload these PDFs, these documents, and then it'll create a summary. It'll create an FAQ. You can chat with the documents. I'm gonna play just 1 minute of this. I don't even have time to read a summary document, but during my commute when I'm picking up, dropping off my kids, what if I could just listen to a podcast? I'm just gonna play a few seconds of this.
Okay, so you want to get a handle on AI and diagnosis. It's a hot topic, tons of information out there, easy to get lost. We've got like this whole stack of articles and studies you sent. It looks like a mix of, perspectives on how AI is learning to diagnose like doctors do, but also what that even means for like the future of medicine.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got some historical context, some really interesting research on how AI is actually like mimicking clinical reasoning. And we've even got a clinical trial testing AI out in the field with real doctors.
This goes on for 25 minutes. And that sounded pretty darn real, didn't it? The podcast will just talk about your articles and tell you the highlights, whatever you want to cover. If you haven't done this yet, do this. Go get an account and upload your CV. Upload your resume to the thing in it. Generate audio overview, and these two podcasts will talk about you and all your amazing achievements, and you'll feel great about yourself. Imagine where you are in the world. I'll do this quick anecdote just to think about the world right now. Hong Kong finance worker. He gets an email from his boss. Can you transfer these funds over to a different account? He emails back saying, can we get on a call, a video conference real quick? I just want to double check I know what I'm supposed to do. There he's on the call. There's his boss, the CFO says, yeah, we just have some different accounts set up. Go ahead and transfer the funds. There's all his coworkers there nodding along. Guys, okay. Click. He transfers $25 million out. First of its kind cyber scam, largest in history. That was not his boss. That was not his coworkers. Someone just got a copy of somebody's face and a voice sample. It's so easy to get on the internet, and AI can so easily replicate it. Just beware, there are a lot of bad actors out there, let alone good actors, having caveats. I was going to do a fun magic demo for fun, but for time, let's do some Q&A. What makes a doctor? Is it knowledge? Is it empathy? Is it liability? I think it is no one of these things. All of these are necessary, but not sufficient. It's not just knowledge. The textbook has knowledge. You need judgment on how to judge when two things are true, but which one matters. It's not just being nice and empathetic. You have to be able to negotiate, convince somebody to make a difference. The surgeon won't go, the patient won't take the medicine, doesn't matter. You have to be able to influence people. And it's taking professional responsibility. And by the way, you can't take responsibility if you don't have the knowledge, if you can't be empathetic and you can't communicate with people. Put all that together in one person or one entity. This is why AI is a very powerful tool. It cannot do the whole job that you do, and nor I think you want it to. But how do you combine that? Warner Slack famously once said, any doctor who could be replaced by a computer should be replaced by a computer. What he's really saying is you can't replace a human with a computer. And by the way, when we're drowning in paperwork, patients stuck on multi-month waiting lists, let's hope AI comes in here to help us. Although, bear in mind, AI is not going to replace anybody, but those who learn how to use it could very well replace those who do not. So, very glad to be here in this conversation with you. Let's learn about what's happening so we can be the ones, not tech companies, defining what's the right way to combine these technologies into practice and really meet all the patients who need us. All right, thanks, everybody. Happy to take some questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chen. This was really highly impactful. So you have received a lot of questions, and I'm going to summarize just a few of them. I think right off the top, I'm hoping you can disabuse folks of the notion that, and maybe this is happening, but the idea that clinicians are actually dropping information into a generative AI tool like ChatGPT that is not covered under a business associate agreement, and it includes patient health information. So the question is, are clinicians doing that? And what is your feedback on them doing that?
So short answer is don't do that. Don't do that. Don't actually copy and paste your patient records into ChatGPT or Gemini. When you do that, you have just uploaded medical records to Microsoft or OpenAI or Google. So they obviously don't do that. It is a very obvious violation of many privacy issues. They can set up secure HIPAA compliant ways to do it, but then it's like your institution has to set up a business association agreement. If you haven't rigged that up yet, you can speak in generalities to chatbot. Don't say, Mary Smith, who is a 92-year-old with this MRI, like, don't do that. But you can say, if I had an 85-year-old woman with heart failure and kidney failure and creatinine is going up to 3, should I increase the dose of Lasix or should I not? That's a kind of a general statement that doesn't necessarily apply to any specific person. You can get away with that, but be careful. Don't use straight up patient information. That's a very obvious privacy violation.
Great, thank you. This issue surprisingly has come up in many presentations that we have facilitated. The next is really one about prompt engineering. So there's a lot of questions, not surprisingly here, and you covered at quite length this notion of what is my purpose if the ChatGPT can perform at such a high level of accuracy. And my question to you is, and you alluded to it in part. You talked about judgment when you get a response, but even generating a response that is responsive and highly accurate, isn't it oftentimes a function of the questions that are
Mhm.
presented to the platform, and that the more knowledgeable the prompt engineer or the clinician asking the question, the better and more accurate the answer could be? And could you elaborate a little bit more, and how important is that to this conversation? Because I don't hear people talking a lot about that.
Mhm.
So would welcome you elaborating on that.
Sure, and I'll also point to it, and also these QR codes will take you to information seminar. And also, we have a web page where we have a whole like foundational curriculum outline, as well as some recordings we had of a recent MedEd symposium, where Shivan Vadak and Dong Yao, some of our recent fellows, did a whole like workshop course on how to do effective prompt engineering, and it's not that sophisticated. It's just like it's this weird behavior. You have to learn how to talk to a chatbot now. You take it for granted you know how to search the internet. You take it for granted you know how to put your credit card online to buy something. 30 years ago, that would be a weird thing. Like nobody knew how to do that. That became an everyday skill. So you're being able to ask meaningful questions and coax the right information out of a computer is this new skill you have to develop. And why also you are still so essential. The computer can do all this stuff. It doesn't know what is a question worth asking. So using that is a key thing. We can talk about it in these workshops a little. Really, you just need to go on and just try it. Just start talking to these, chatting with these things, and it will surprise you what it's capable of. It'll open up your eyes on terms of like, oh, I this is a weird thing. I should try this, try that. The reality is at this point, my wife talks to ChatGPT more than she talks to me because it is such a useful tool to help her think through all sorts of complex problems at work and other places.
So we've had a number of questions, and you touched on it around essentially liability and regulation. They're related, but they're not entirely the same. Regulation really applies to the developers and deployers or end users of a tool, and liability is uniquely related, not uniquely, but certainly top of mind for clinicians around medical liability when there's harm. Can you speak a little bit to the types of risks physicians may or may not, or more generally, clinicians may face utilizing these tools, bearing in mind we have 50 states plus DC and the territories, and we have the federal government, and medical liability is determined at a state level. And so maybe you can touch a little bit on the factors that they should consult a lawyer and their own lawyers, but what are some of the
Yeah.
factors that clinicians should keep top of mind?
I think we actually have some lawyers on the call. you could probably answer better than I could. I'll summarize in that it's kind of like using the internet. It's looking up something up to date. Well, based on this article and up to date, it seems like I should prescribe this medicine, and you do it. It's technically you are responsible, even if that article turned out it didn't apply to you. Even if the AI says something that didn't apply to it. For better or worse, you're the one that signs the order, and people hold you responsible for anything that does or doesn't happen. And that could be a good thing too. You might be making better decisions as a result of it. And for better, probably for worse, the tech companies are holding like no liability right now. And they have this disclaimer, you can't even use this for any medical purpose at all, even though it's obvious people are. They're doing it for strictly legalistic reasons. Here it's just, think of it as a really cool, useful tool and resource, but just like an up-to-date article, just like a research article, just like a guideline, it's a guideline. You still have to use your judgment of whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense for your patients.
And so this is actually a great segue. We have time for one more question before we start to wrap up. And that really is around bias. And so the question that we have here is generally about this idea about racial consciousness. I think you've already clearly established these are not conscious machines. They're pattern, very high level pattern recognition, super systems. But how do you address the potential, not just for racial, but we have lots of local variation. You have rural communities that look different than urban communities in terms of age, acuity level, differences that possibly
Mhm.
based on gender, race, fill in the blank. So how do you, as a clinician, using tools, not necessarily knowing what data these tools have been trained
Mhm.
on, how do you probe for that? And what are some practical insights and
Yeah, yeah.
considerations?
I mean, I think the short answer is just your awareness of that, your intentionality with everything you do and being conscious that that is even a possible risk that can happen. You're already way ahead of the curve. And like, it's kind of like when I tell my trainees about like end of life conversation. If you just care about it, like you're going to figure it out. The problem is most people aren't even aware of it or don't think about it as an issue. If you haven't, this is a fantastic story about Microsoft's Tay, the chatbot they released on Twitter several years ago. And like within a day, they had to shut it down because it started saying all sorts of racist, nasty things. Because humans figured out, ha ha ha, all you have to do is just tell the chatbot racist, nasty things and it will say it back to you. Because it's trying to become more human. It's trying to learn human phrases, right? It is as good as the data, as the information we feed into it. And there's a lot of useful information on the internet. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, maybe you don't want the AI to be learning and representing. So because of those really nasty experiences in the past, the tech companies are aware like that was unacceptable. So they've done a lot to try to steer AI safety to make them more responsible and tolerable, but it could never be perfect. And also, I'm not sure perfect could be defined here. So in terms of practical things, you're being, as a user, just being aware that that is a risk as possible and double check when something matters and ask it if it would make a difference in this case or that. Um, it doesn't solve the problem, but this is like a problem that's not meant to be solved. It's a problem to just that we always work on all the time.
Yeah, and I'm going to provide just a little bit of a plug that local validation really matters. And
Hmm.
so, really having an appreciation for the local conditions in which you're deploying, and that's your patient population and your conditions of deployment, which may be different than perhaps the data that it is drawing from. And as a prompt engineer, ensuring that is included in your discussion, whether for differentials or providing appropriate context. And so, with that, I'd really like to extend our gratitude as a collective number of partners from across the nation. You met the CTRC team, but there are many TRCs and other partners around the country that have partnered here. We look forward to our upcoming sessions, but thank you again. You've done an incredible job in it making all of this information incredibly accessible. So as we wrap up, I want to invite everyone to complete a really short exit survey. On then just a couple of reminders. On July 23rd, we will be hosting another 1 hour virtual session with two speakers that will dive into some specific applications of healthcare AI. And then, of course, on August 12th, if you're in Los Angeles, we hope to see you in person. And we will be streaming virtually 4 sessions, 45 minutes long. And we urge you to register for all these sessions on our website at healthaibootcamp.org. And I see responses rolling in. So thank you for giving us that feedback. And again, I'd like to thank both our attendees for showing up today. We really need to democratize AI. Stanford, Duke, Iowa. We have University of Mississippi, Mayo. We have lots of speakers from flagship institutions that are doing incredible work, but we really need everyone to be along for this really dramatic change in healthcare, and you all are the ambassadors. So we hope to see you for the rest of our sessions and to bring others along with you. So with that, we'd like to thank you, and we will see you again in July.
Thank you, everybody. Great to connect.